Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 7 o'clock in the morning here, Sunday morning, May the 2nd, and I'm happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us. It's a 30-minute streaming, live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And my chat room is open. You're welcome to sit in there if you're awake and up this morning and feel like coming and sitting in a chat room. That's fine. We're going to continue on with the topic, domestic violence and abuse, signs of abuse and abusive relationships. We're also going to look at a safety plan from domesticviolence.org and just kind of, keep going with this for a little while. It's so important. There's so many people suffering in domestic violence situations and domestic abuse. There are two different things. It's really horrible, the amount of people that are affected by domestic violence and abuse, right? There's so many people that are affected by it. Children are especially affected by it. But I've in my own life have known so many people who lived in domestic violence and abuse situations, whether they were the children of these parents or whether they were the parents or just a couple. So it has affected my life. I also grew up in an abusive home with lots of domestic violence and abuse, and carried on down to us, and so we suffered in that family as well. So I'm a survivor of child abuse, so I've sort of seen the whole entire thing, and I just see reports in the paper all the time regarding people losing their lives due to domestic violence, escalating to the point where their partner kills them, right? And this is just crazy. And you think, why couldn't that person get some help? And what was the issues going on behind it? Well, I know firsthand what it is, but a lot of people don't, and they don't realize just how serious it is and how much of a problem it really is. Most of it's actually not reported because these people, they love their partners, whether they're men and women. They either love them so much that they don't want to see them go to jail, so they'll tolerate the abuse, or they're living in fear, such extreme fear that they, because I know so many people who have been through this, and their lives were so controlled and so threatened that, if they made a move, they would really fear for their life. So that's why a lot of people do not call and get help. They suffer through with the abuse and end up getting killed at the hands of their partner. So it's so horrible, so sad. So we're going to continue to look at this, and we're going to get right into it. It's not a professional show. I'm not a professional counselor or therapist. I can offer no legal advice. I'm just a person, a private citizen who pays to do this show because I really believe that these issues that face us, child abuse and human rights abuses and domestic violence and sexual assault and online, child predators, just the whole thing is a real serious problem, and we need to start talking about it. So that's why I'm doing this show. So I'm just really happy for everybody that's tuning in and listening, and I really appreciate the support. I'm a child rights advocate. I fight against child abuse. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, which makes me so happy because it's a great role. It's a volunteer role, and it makes me happy to be able to stand with them to really promote awareness, education, and prevention of child abuse, primary prevention. We are a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, and really out there to get the information out to people who work with children. Parents who are having a hard time coping can contact us. People who need some information, regarding where to go get help can contact us, and we will find someone who has the answers for you. And so, this is so important that we talk about all this. Mainstream society, as long as they don't hear about abuse, nothing will ever be done. And as long as the public does not, the main society, the communities, the people in the world here today, as long as people do not stand up and start making some noise and letting these lawmakers know that laws need to change in regards to protecting children and protecting others, right, adults as well. We're talking about human rights for all. But especially for children, because children cannot protect themselves and they do not have the ability to do that. So we have to do that for them, right? So as long as society just blows it off and just doesn't care and thinks, oh, well, it's not my problem, lawmakers, it'll stay the same. Nothing will be done. And really, we need to see some changes in the way that this is all being handled, because children every day are losing their lives at the hands of caregivers and parents who, can't cope and who've already probably been called and sort of brought up on charges with DHS and different child protection agencies, and these children then are remaining in the home and are being killed at the hands of their parents. And these are little youngsters, most of them are under the age of 4, but you can see, with the reports in the paper, there's lots of, kids like, 7, 8, 10, 14 years old as well. So it's just horrible. It needs to stop. And, if we don't all start standing up and making some noise, it's not going to happen. So that's why I'm just adding my voice to everybody else's voice out there, to be one more voice. That's all. And I hope everybody else will do the same and do exactly what I'm doing, or what everybody else is doing, and get out there in whatever way you can, because we all have different ways of doing things, and we all have different ideas on what will work. And I think as long as we're trying to do something, it will make a difference. So, I just appreciate everybody who's out there, who's raising a hand to help a child, who's raising a hand to help make this world a better place for children. My heart is with you, because you're standing up to the task. You're taking on that role, and you're going for it. And so I just thank you so much for doing that, because we all need to do it, and I say it on every single show. So thank you so much. And if you're a young person under the age of 18, I fight for child rights, and I stand up for children. I believe in online child safety, and you have to be aware that there are people out there who are actually looking for you. There are millions of child sexual predators online looking to get a hold of children. They will use any means that they can to get a hold of you, to assault you, and to sexually abuse you. You have to keep yourself safe. Make sure that an adult, a parent, a caregiver, someone is listening to this with you, and make sure that you have permission to listen to this. And when you go into a chat room, never, ever, ever give out your real name, your phone number, your address. Don't tell them what school you go to. You be very careful, because kids are losing their lives to child sexual predators, believe it or not. There's reports in the paper just recently where a young person met someone after school thinking it was a 12-year-old buddy who with a skateboard. Turns out to be a child sexual predator. This person was not killed, but his life will be forever changed. His innocence will be gone. His youth will be stolen from him, because he was sexually assaulted by this child sexual predator who was an adult, faking, pretending to be a child, and pretending to be a young person. Right? This can happen. People are sick, and there's lots of sick people in the world. You have to make sure. You don't want to live in fear. What you want to do is get the education, get the facts, get the education, educate yourself, and keep yourself safe, regarding what's actually happening out there and how people are trying to get a hold of you, so that you can be aware when you are, doing whatever you're doing throughout your day, that you don't want to live in fear, because that's a drag. Fear is horrible. It won't help you at all. What will help you is knowing the facts and knowing how to keep yourself safe, and that's what's going to help you. And that's the same in domestic violence situations. You need to know the facts on how to get help and how to stay safe. And if your life is being threatened, you really have to make sure that you get yourself to safety. And if your children's lives are being threatened, then that's just even more important if there's children involved, because your children, they're counting on you really to get them to a safe place, so that you can have a good life, right? So it's just so important. So we're going to get right into this article. And if the topics of abuse bother you, you have to turn it off. Listen at your own discretion, please, because I talk about everything regarding child abuse and every kind of abuse, domestic violence and abuse, sexual abuse, you name it. So we're talking about it on this show. So if it's a topic that's going to bother you, please turn the show off. You won't be hurting my feelings. And listen, listen at your own discretion. So we're going to finish this article here from Domestic Violence and Abuse. It's actually from helpguide.org, HTTP helpguide.org. And it's a great article on domestic violence and abuse, signs of abuse and abusive relationships. We've gone through most of it now. And yesterday we were looking at the cycle of violence in domestic violence and domestic abuse. And looking at, first there's the abuse, then there's the guilt, then there's the normal behavior, excuses, and then the fantasy, the setup, and then back to the abuse. So it's just one big cycle. And abusers, they know what they're doing. It's about control. It's not about really much of anything else. It is about controlling their partner. So that's the whole issue. They can choose to not abuse. There's no excuse for abuse of any kind, whether it's child abuse or domestic violence and abuse. There's just no excuse, because the abuser is at fault. They have the choice to not abuse, and they choose to do it. So how could it be another person's fault? How could it be anyone's fault to be battered or emotionally or psychologically battered, in a relationship? there's no way it could be your fault because the abuser is the one who's choosing to abuse you. So you just want to make sure that you keep that straight in your head. And remember, if you're a young person and you're a child and you're listening to this and you're being abused, how could it ever be your fault? Children do not deserve to be abused. There's no excuse for abuse. And, it's always the abuser's fault because they don't have to abuse. They don't have to be physically abusive. They don't have to be emotionally abusive. Sorry about that. I'm just waking up and my voice is kind of terrible. It's their choice, and they choose to do it, so they are the ones that are guilty. And abuse is against the law, and it's wrong in every way. And so if you have been abused, just remember that it was not your fault, and you did not deserve to be treated that way. No one does. And quite often we're not told that, especially because if you grew up in an abusive environment or abusive home, you're not going to hear these things. People aren't going to tell you that you didn't deserve that. You know what I mean? Because I grew up abused in an abusive home. So I know, I was not told these things. I had to learn them for myself later on, years later, and learn that, I had nothing to do with it. I was just really a victim in that situation. And now, thank God, I'm a survivor. And I hope everybody will get the fight to live and want to get out from underneath these abusive relationships and get a good life, it's just so important. Growing up in an abusive home, a lot of times people will go on and then be re-victimized in another relationship, with whether it's a same-sex partner or another marriage, or whatever. These, or boyfriend-girlfriend type thing, right? It's unfortunate because, you spend your childhood being abused and then you move on and you think you've met the person of your dreams, and they turn out to be these abusive people. So then your self-esteem is really knocked down for a loop because you start thinking, maybe I just deserve this. Maybe I've just done something that, I must just deserve, right? That's how this is what it does to people. It really affects their sense of self-esteem and who they are. It really affects their sense of self-worth, and all of a sudden they start feeling pretty worthless, and they just think, okay, well, I'll just stay in this worthless situation because there must be something wrong with me because I keep getting abused, so I must deserve it. So you don't want to think like that. And many times survivors of child abuse are re-victimized because they don't quite know how to set the boundaries on who to let into their lives, and that can happen. I've seen it myself firsthand. I made a really huge decision as an adult that I would not ever let anyone ever abuse me again in a relationship, whether it's a friendship, at work, it doesn't matter where. Like my partner, boyfriend, girl, my partner situation does not matter. I refuse to allow anyone to abuse me again. So I made a huge decision, and I'm standing by it. And I had enough abuse already, and I just want to have a nice life like everybody else. And so I see people doing this, though, and they stay in these relationships, and my heart just breaks for them because I'm like, no, you don't deserve to be treated like that. That person does not love you, because if they loved you, they would not be doing that. You know what I mean? And it's just so incredibly wrong how people manipulate and abuse their partners and then tell them that they love them, to get them to stay, and I'll change, and all this BS. And that's what this article was really good about. It sort of went right into all that, the psychological stuff behind it, and how the abuser will talk you through just about everything to allow you, to get you to stay so that they can continue to do what they do. And see, when you're gone out of the relationship, they'll meet someone else, and they'll just do it with them too. Because abusers, there's something wrong with their brains. Like, honest to God, if you go in and you research it, there is something wrong with people who habitually abuse and continually abuse people. They have something missing. There's a missing link, or they might have been abused as children and never got any help, and it just was so psychologically damaging that they can't think any different. And these people generally need lots and lots of treatment. And so, if you go back and you check the National Sex Offenders Registry and registries of people who have abused people in the past, you'd be surprised to see how many of those people are married multiple times and abuse each one of those partners. And or they're living with these people and then they move on to another relationship, and you'd be really surprised to see how many people they actually how many lives they actually ruin because they can fake people out. They're very manipulative. They will do whatever they can to get you to stay and to get you to believe that they're going to change. I've seen this firsthand. I know all about it. I grew up with friends whose parents were like that, and they just went from one bad marriage to another, one bad abusive marriage to another, and just went on and on and on. Now, my parents stuck it out, and they were just abusive the whole entire time. They were, I don't know if they were ever really happily married when they first were married, but they might have tried to put on a good show. But they continued to behave the way that they did for approximately, well, my mother was 68 when she passed away, so I would say for 48 years, right, almost 50 years, they continued to batter and belittle each other and treat each other extremely, extremely bad and tear each other down. But they stayed in the marriage, and it was really unfortunate because we tried to get my mom to leave, but she would not leave. And so my mom was abused as a child, so she went right into a domestic violence, a domestic abuse situation. My dad was very abusive and very I don't know, not a good man, not a nice man. And so, her life was completely ruined. And then she had a bunch of kids that she did not want. She mistreated us all, lots of abuse and physical abuse and emotional scarring, psychological damage. So bad. And we kept telling, we wanted the best for her, so we as kids kept telling her, just go, leave, because you're obviously not happy. We're having to bear the brunt of this crap. You go and get yourself a good life, even if you don't take us with you, whatever, just go. And she would not go. And so she spent her whole life being abused. You know what I mean? Do not let that happen to you. I made the decision when I turned, when I became fully aware of this, what was going on, and said, no way will I ever let another person abuse me. So not even just in a relationship, like an intimate partner relationship. I'm talking friends, people in my life, family members. I will be treated with respect because I will treat you with respect. And so, I want to be treated as I will treat other people. So I take no abuse from anyone. And the minute somebody starts acting abusive around me, I just cut them off. I completely cut them off. Especially when there's no real attempt to be apologetic about it. They are just out of my life, 100%. Because I refuse to hang around with losers, and I refuse to hang around with people who go around abusing people and thinking it's okay. Because I was already abused as a child, and everybody thought it was okay for my mom to bash my head in and beat me on a regular basis and yell and curse and scream at me and throw things at me. And really, I was treated really quite horribly for so many years. And so everyone in the family thought that was okay, but that's because they were warped and they were living in that environment, so they just, lots of them actually just thought it was all right and went on to do that with their own children. So, this is what I'm saying. The cycle of abuse, it's so hugely wrong, and it has to be stopped. You have to make the decision to stop it. And you might have to pay the price for a little while and not be able to live where you want to live and have the things that you want to have to get out of an abusive home, especially if you're an adult and you're living with domestic violence and abuse. We all know that the shelters are way overcrowded and there's all kinds of problems with trying to get help. But you know what? You could save your life. So if your life is being threatened, you want to get help. So we were looking at that full cycle of domestic violence yesterday, recognizing the warning signs of domestic violence and abuse. We did kind of go into that a little bit. General warning signs of domestic abuse. People who are being abused may seem to be afraid or anxious to please their partner. They might go along with everything that their partner says, because they don't question anything that their partner says for them to do. They might talk about their partner's temper a little bit, jealousy, possessiveness. Physical signs that you can see is that they might have frequent injuries with no excuse for these injuries, right? Or, they might just fall down all the time. That's their excuse. Oh, I've fallen down. I've fallen down again. How many times can people fall down? You know what I mean? And do the bruises actually match the falling down situations, right? Frequently miss work, school, or other occasions without explanation. Dressed in all kinds of clothing to hide these bruises and scars, you know what I mean? And then there's warning signs of isolation. They might be restricted from seeing family and friends. If you know someone who's very social, and then all of a sudden you never hear from them again, you can start to wonder, if they're in a new relationship with a person or a marriage or whatever, all of a sudden they're gone out of your life. You might start to wonder, what happened there? Well, it could be a warning sign. You want to check up on people, right? It might seem kind of nosy, but you know what though? You could save their life. They rarely go out in public without their partner, and they have limited access to money, credit cards, or the car. This I saw in my own family. As a matter of fact, all of this I saw in my own family, and with my siblings, in my siblings' marriages as well, because they went on to do the same exact things that my parents did. See, they didn't break the cycle. And, they were a little bit better about it because they grew up abused, so they didn't, they weren't as abusive as my parents were, but they still continued on in a lot of this crazy, controlling stuff with their own partners, right? And I saw it myself with my own family, right? The psychological warning signs of abuse, this is, they might have very low self-esteem, even if they used to be confident. They might show major personality changes. They might have used to have been very outgoing, and then all of a sudden they're very withdrawn. That's something that was, that's different. Like if somebody's behavior changes so drastically like that, you might begin to, you think there would be something wrong, there probably is. And they might not be saying anything about it because people are very much ashamed to come forward and say that they're being battered and abused in their home. And they might not be experiencing any physical abuse, but there could be lots of emotional, verbal, and psychological abuse, which is very damaging and causes a lot of problems. They might be depressed, anxious, or suicidal. And so that's what that does, psychological abuse and emotional abuse will cause many people to go on and commit suicide. And it makes people very anxious and depressed. And I find that, lots of people are, I talk a lot about the physical abuse that my mom did towards me, but that's, because that was part of it. But there was more damage done with the verbal and the psychological abuse that she did, because that stayed with me for a long time. You know what I mean? The beatings and stuff they don't stay with you, but it's what they say to you and what you know that they feel about you is what really hurts. And so if I hadn't loved my mom so much, I guess it wouldn't have mattered, right? But I really loved her. And then to hear these horrible things come out of her mouth towards me, as a young person, really, it was very hard. And then even as an adult woman, she still continued to berate me and tell me these horrible things, right? And then I would call her on it, and I'd be like, "You can't be serious. You can't be serious about what you're saying." And she's like, "I'm totally serious, So then I found out the truth, you know what I mean? And my family really has a hard time with that because they do not want to, they don't want to acknowledge that my mom was like that, but she was. She was just suffering, and she was just horrible. She was suffering, and she took it out on us, and she had the choice to not do that. See, her abuse is not excusable. Abuse is not excusable. You cannot excuse abuse. So I do not give her any excuse at all for what she did, but she never ever apologized for any of her behavior either. So, and most abusers won't because they feel that they're justified by doing it. Well, look at me, look how I was treated. Look how your father treated me. Well, it's like, well, look how you treated me. You know what I mean? You were the abuser here in my case, so you're the one at fault, right? So everybody needs to get a really good idea of who is at fault, and it is always the abuser. So make sure you keep that in your mind. It's very important. And speak up, it says, if you suspect domestic violence or abuse. It says do's and don'ts. Do ask, do express concern, do listen and validate, do offer help, and do support their decisions, right? If you know someone at work who's talked to you and they said that they are being abused, right, you can express concern, listen and validate what they're saying, offer help, support their decisions, but don't wait for them to come to you. If you notice that, and you notice something's wrong with someone, don't wait for them to come to you. Just go and ask, is there something I can do? Because they might not tell you right away, but maybe a couple weeks later they might, because they think, oh, this person does care, and I could trust them, right? They might think about it. It says, don't judge or blame. That's the worst thing you can do because they are in a lot of pressure. They are having a lot of hard times trying to make decisions on what to do, right? It's very confusing when you're being battered at home and then people are, well, just get out. What are you doing? And trying to, judge or blame these people, right, for their decisions. the best thing to do is support them, because then they know that they can come to you for help, right? So important. If you judge and blame them, they might not want to tell you anything else, and then you will never. They won't ask you. They won't get help, right? So that's not good, right? It says don't pressure them, right? Give them advice. Don't give them advice. Don't pressure them. And don't place conditions on your support by saying, like, if you don't leave, I'm not going to be your friend. I've heard this from people. I've heard this in situations. Like, if you don't do this, I'm not going to be your friend, right? Well, that's not a friend anyway who would say that anyway, right? And that's not somebody who cares. That's just somebody who wants you to do what they want you to do. And then if you're not, it's more abuse is what it is. I mean, that's just more abuse on somebody else, right? The whole idea is to offer some help, listen and validate. Let them know that you're concerned, that you can help them if they need information on how to get help, and that you would be there to support them. Give them, if you really are going to be there for them 100%, not backing out of it at the time of need. Give them your phone number, I guess, and tell them, hey, look, if there's an emergency and your life is being threatened, let's get a code set up so that all you have to do is phone me and say blue, and I will phone 911. And, see, this is the thing. Make sure, if you really care about somebody, and that's the thing to do. Don't blame and judge and put pressure on them and put conditions on your support and all that, right? That's garbage. And that's for people that, I'm sorry, there's no excuse for that. People are suffering, and there might be a lot of reasons behind the whole issue of why they can't leave or why they won't leave. And the whole issue is there's been cases where women have left and then end up killed because they didn't leave properly. You have to have a safety plan, and we're going to look at that right now. This article, that we just finished that up pretty much. That's it for that article from Help Guide. But here's another one from domesticviolence.org. It says, what can I do to be safe? It says, and you can get that, www.domesticviolence.org. Go right to that website and get a safety plan. And it says, what can I do to be safe? Call the police. It says, if you feel you are in danger from your abuser at any time, you can call 911 or your local police. It says, if you are in danger when the police come, they can protect you, right? Because that's why you want to call the police. They can help you and your children leave your home safely. They can arrest your abuser when they have enough proof that you have been abused, right? They can arrest your abuser if a personal protection order, or PPO, has been violated. And when the police come, tell them everything the abuser did that made you call. And it says if you have been hit, tell the police where. Tell them how many times it happened. Show them marks left on your body, marks that may take time to show up. If you see a mark after the police leave, call the police to take pictures of the marks, and they may be used in court. And if your abuser has broken any property, show the police, that the police can give you information on domestic violence programs and shelters. The police must make a report saying what happened to you, and police reports can be used in court if your abuser is charged with a crime. Get the officer's name, badge numbers, and the report number in case you need a copy of the report. You need to do that. Make sure you get their names, badge numbers, and report number, so that you can request a copy of that report. And a police report can be used to help you get a PPO. That's a personal protection order. And get support from friends and family. It says, tell your supportive family, friends, and coworkers what's happened. Find a safe place. It is not fair. You should not have to leave your home because of what your abuser has done. But sometimes it is the only way you will be safe. And there are shelters that can help you move to a different city or state. And there's different, we all know there's problems with the shelters too because they're overcrowded. That's how serious this domestic violence situation is. And it's no fun to live in a shelter. But you know what? It's no fun to be killed and murdered at the hands of your partner. And the scars, the emotional scars that they will leave on you for the rest of your entire life if they don't completely disfigure you and cripple you in an abusive attack. You cannot take this lightly, and you cannot just say, "Oh, I don't count. I don't matter. It doesn't matter if my partner kills me or abuses me." My mom had me so beaten down that with physical violence, emotional violence, and verbal violence, that by the time I was 10, I felt that I was dead, and that she had literally killed my spirit. And I told her to go ahead and kill me. And so, and that's how I felt. Do not let someone do that to you. It's so hard to come back from that. Make sure that you get some help. Then you can personalize your safety plan. We're going to continue talking about this tomorrow night. And we have about a minute left, and I just can't thank you enough for tuning in. Make sure you get some help, everybody, and make sure that you get yourself to safety if your life is being threatened. And I'll be on tomorrow morning, One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, same 6 o'clock in the morning Mountain Standard Time. Then I'll be on tomorrow night with Elizabeth Brawley on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio. at www.blogtalkradio.com/dreamcatchers. Elizabeth Brawley is the Southern Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. She's awesome, and she knows a whole lot about all kinds of stuff, child abuse prevention, and what's happening out there with the laws and the different issues going on. So, and she's very knowledgeable, and I'm so excited to be on the show with her. Have a great day, everybody. I hope you can tune in live to that one. And just take care of yourselves. Have a great day, and keep yourself safe. And if you need help, make sure you keep reaching out. You know, do not allow yourself to suffer in silence, because silence is the problem. It allows the abuse to continue, and it allows, you know, what's going on in your heart to continue. And you deserve to have a good life. You are worth it. You do count. You do matter. And you just say that to yourself over and over until you believe it. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.